How do we change the world? Like, how do you create a personal brand that changes the world? The thing that you're going to bump up against is what we call Sheehan's Wall. So we named this after Peter Sheehan, who is a colleague, a friend of mine. He's alive still. People go like, oh, he must be like an old mentor. He's actually like my same age. Very, very smart. He taught me this concept originally applied to business, and then we've kind of tailored it to personal brands. But and that's why we named it after him. And that in any group, in any vertical, in any industry, there's two groups of people. There are the unknown, and then there are the well-known, right? There are people who have a vision, right? They're unknown. They're living in obscurity, but they have a dream. I want to write a book that changes the world. I want to speak on stages. I want to have huge social media following. I want to start a company. Like, I want to create some type of a movement, but nobody yet knows about it. And there's actually a lot of those people, right? A lot of people have that. Very, very few reach the other side of becoming well-known. You know, obviously these are the Oprahs, the Brene Browns, the Tony Robbins, the Mel Robbins. I thought that maybe I should just change my last name to Rory Robbins because it seems to be part of the strategy that works. And what happens is there's this invisible wall, which is what we call Sheehan's Wall. And what most of us do, most of us who are on the unknown or the obscurity side, we look at the people who are well-known or in the notoriety side, and we say, I want to do what they do, right? And so we look at Tony Robbins and we go, oh, he talks about money, he talks about health, he talks about relationship mastery, he's got, motivation and inspiration, and he's got all these different topics. And so we go, well, I'm multifaceted. I have lots of different topics that I want to talk about. So we talk about a lot of different topics. Then what happens is we have all this inspiration for all these new products. And we go, man, we could sell t-shirts. We could do calendars. We could do magnets. We could do day planners. We could do, we could launch a shoe line. We could have clothing. We could have, various different products. Then we go, well, look at Mel Robbins. She's everywhere. So I got to be on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and podcast and whatever, Facebook and so forth. So then we're trying to manage all these different social media profiles. Then every time you scroll through online, you see an ad for someone talking about a new business model. Like, hey, let me tell you why masterminds are the way to make millions, or actually live events is how you blow it out. If you want to know how to retire rich, I'll show you how to do private Facebook groups. And then it's like courses, keynote speaking, write a book, and all these different business models. And then like any entrepreneur, you have all the different jobs, right? You're the head of marketing, you're the head of sales, you're the head of product development, you're the head of delivery, you're the head of customer service, you're the head of collections, you're the head of finances and cash flow, and you have too many jobs. And then, to make matters worse, every day you wake up with more ideas. More ideas, more ideas. And what happens is, while all of these things aren't inherently bad, the combination of them serves to be a very predictably ineffective strategy to build a world-renowned brand. Because what happens is when you do all of these things, you bounce off the wall. And the reason you bounce off of the wall is because of something, we actually talk about this in my very first book, Take the Stairs, which is that book is about the psychology of overcoming procrastination. And one of the things in that work is we said, if you have diluted focus, you get diluted results, period. You have diluted focus, you get diluted results. Lewis Howes has been so generous with his praise of us. He gives us so much credit, way more than we deserve. I'm super grateful for him. It is true that when we started working with Lewis, he had like 30 million downloads and was doing a couple $1 million a year. And then in the first like 2.5 years together, he went from 30 million to 500 million downloads. And his business went from multi-7-figure to 8 figures. And then obviously we helped him launch this last book, which was another massive New York Times bestseller. Lewis gives us so much credit. I really don't think that I've taught Lewis that much. But the thing that happened is when the true story is the very first day that we were working with Lewis, he came through and we had him list all of his revenue streams. And he had 17 revenue streams, 17 different ways that he was making money. And we took him through this analysis. I'm happy to take any of you through it. It's an exercise that we do in our formal curriculum at our events with our strategists, is you do this, you list them all out, and then we just look at which ones have the most natural momentum, which ones take the most amount of time, which ones create the most amount of stress. And it's a very simple thing. And what happens is the output of it is it basically tells us, here is the thing that has the most natural momentum. Well, when we did that with Lewis, podcasting was a very smaller revenue stream. He really, at that time, was making money from courses. And what brought up the topic of conversation is he said, hey, I'm thinking about doing the free plus shipping thing. That's what all my friends are doing. And I just said, well, what are all the ways you're making money? And we listed it out. And it became obvious to us. We said, Lewis, what would happen if you shut everything else down and just went all in on the podcast? What if you let go of like being the webinar guy and the course guy and like the LinkedIn guy and didn't chase keynote speaking as much? At that time, he had a mastermind. And this was to his, all this to his credit. Like he had some big cojones because he had multi-7-figure revenue in his mastermind. And I was actually helping him lead it. I was doing most of the teaching at his mastermind for some of the days. And he literally was like, we're going to shut it down next week. And so I was there. And so I was there the day we shut that down. That was a multi-7-figure decision. And what happened was he exploded, right? The podcast exploded. Why? Because we were teaching him podcast hacks? No, because he had diluted focus and all we did was help him go, dude, go all in on this one thing. Screw everything else. This is the thing that God has prepared for you, good works that have been prepared for you in advance. Like, let's do this.